If you've ever stared at your screen for hours, knowing exactly what you need to do, and still not doing it, this is for you. Because what you're experiencing may not be laziness at all. In psychology and neuroscience, there is a well-documented survival response called the freeze response. It sits alongside fight and flight. And when it becomes chronic, especially in modern life, many therapists refer to it as functional freeze. You're not collapsed in bed. You're not visibly falling apart. You're functioning, going to work, replying to messages, scrolling, eating, surviving. But inside, something is stuck. Functional freeze happens when the nervous system is exposed to prolonged stress, emotional overload, or unresolved threat. Not always something dramatic, sometimes years of pressure, expectation, or uncertainty. The brain decides that action feels unsafe, so it hits pause, motivation drops, time blurs, simple tasks feel strangely heavy, and the more you judge yourself for it, the deeper the freeze becomes. This isn't a mindset problem. It's a nervous system state. Brain imaging studies show that under chronic stress, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning and decision-making, goes offline. Meanwhile, the body conserves energy, preparing for danger that never fully arrives. From the outside, it looks like procrastination. From the inside, it feels like being trapped behind invisible glass. Functional freeze doesn't usually start suddenly, it builds quietly. It often begins with high responsibility and low recovery. You push through stress, you ignore exhaustion, you stay strong for too long. At first, your nervous system uses fight or flight. You hustle, you overthink, you try harder. But when stress doesn't end, when there's no clear escape, no real relief, the body switches strategies. It freezes. This is a well-established survival mechanism seen in both humans and animals. When action no longer feels effective or safe, the nervous system slows everything down to avoid further damage. That's why people in functional freeze aren't weak or incapable. They're often highly intelligent, self-aware, and conscientious. Their systems simply absorbed more stress than they could process. You may notice signs like this: difficulty starting tasks, even ones you care about. Feeling mentally foggy but emotionally numb. Scrolling endlessly, not for pleasure, but to avoid effort. Wanting change, but feeling no internal go signal. This isn't a lack of discipline. It's a lack of felt safety. And here's the paradox. The harder you force productivity, the more your body resists. Because freeze doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to signals of safety. When people realize they might be frozen, the first advice they hear is simple. Just rest. Take a break. Do nothing for a while. But for someone in functional freeze, rest often feels unbearable, because stillness isn't neutral. When the nervous system slows down, the mind gets louder. Unfinished tasks surface, guilt creeps in, time feels like it's slipping away. Research in trauma psychology shows that freeze is not a lack of energy. It's inhibited energy. The body wants to act, but doesn't feel safe enough to move. So when you rest without regulation, your system doesn't recover, it ruminates. That's why lying in bed all day rarely brings relief. Productivity culture mislabels this as laziness, but neuroscience frames it differently. In freeze, the vagus nerve shifts the body into conservation mode. Heart rate lowers, motivation dampens. The system waits, not for discipline, for safety cues. And until those cues appear, no planner, no routine, no motivational speech will stick. Unfreezing doesn't happen through willpower. It happens through signals. The nervous system doesn't respond to logic. It responds to experience. That's why big goals fail in freeze. More expectation. What works instead are small, predictable actions that gently tell the body, I can move and nothing bad happens. Clinical approaches like somatic therapy and polyvagal informed care focus on this exact principle. You don't push the system forward. You invite it, standing up and stretching for 30 seconds, opening a document without trying to finish it, taking a slow breath and extending the exhale. These actions aren't about productivity. They're about restoring agency. Each small completion sends a signal up the nervous system. Movement is possible. Choice exists. Danger is not immediate. Over time, the prefrontal cortex begins to re-engage. Decision-making returns. Motivation follows. Not before. This is why people often say, I don't feel motivated. But once I start, something shifts. That shift isn't magic, it's biology. One of the most overlooked traps in functional freeze is identity. When you start believing, I'm lazy, or I'm broken, you send your nervous system the exact opposite signal of safety. The mind begins to justify inaction. I can't start because I'm lazy. They're amplifiers of freeze. Studies in neuroscience show that repeated negative self-talk actually reinforces neural patterns associated with stress and inhibition. The brain treats these thoughts like real threats, and your body stays stuck, Changing identity doesn't happen overnight. It's about micro shifts in language and action, replacing "I'm lazy" with "I'm paused and that's okay." Acknowledging what small steps you can take, giving your nervous system signals that movement is safe, not dangerous. This is why even capable, high-achieving people can feel trapped for years. They are biologically stuck in a state their mind interprets as survival, while their heart and logic scream for progress. Unfreezing is a gradual process, not a single breakthrough. The first step is acknowledgement. Recognize that what you're feeling isn't laziness. It's a nervous system signal, a state of pause that developed to protect you. Next comes micro-movement. Start with tiny actions. Opening a notebook, writing one sentence, walking for 2 minutes. These small steps tell your system, "I'm safe, I can act." Regulation practices are equally vital. Slow, intentional breathing, gentle stretching or yoga, mindful observation of your thoughts, without judgment. Over time, these practices restore agency. The prefrontal cortex re-engages. Motivation and focus return naturally. Remember, this isn't about discipline or pushing harder. It's about safety, small wins, and consistent signals. Functional freeze is reversible. And with patience, your energy, clarity, and drive will come back, stronger than before. You're not lazy, you were paused. And now, step by step, you can move again.